He was 90 years old, skin like paper, breath rattling softly through an oxygen tube, and he had just asked his 26-year-old nurse to marry him. The room fell silent. The other staff froze. His greedy relatives stared at her like she'd just stolen the world. And she stood there in that hospital room, in her cheap white sneakers and faded pink scrubs, shaking, not from excitement, from fear, from confusion, from the crushing weight of a question that could change everything. What she didn't know, in that moment, was this. The man everyone treated like a dying nobody was a secret billionaire who had chosen her for the most dangerous test of her life. Let's rewind. Because to understand why a virgin nurse ended up being asked to marry a 90-year-old patient, we have to go back to where her story really started. Her name was Amelia Ortiz. She lived in a small one-bedroom apartment above a noisy mechanics shop on the edge of the city. The kind of place where the walls were too thin, the rent was too high, and the dreams were usually too big for the neighborhood to hold. Every morning, Amelia would wake up before the sun, say a quiet prayer next to her bed, tie her curly hair into a bun, and pull on the same set of washed-out scrubs that had seen more pain and more miracles than most people do in a lifetime. Amelia was a nurse at St. Augustine General Hospital, not the fancy private one. The overworked, understaffed, we take whoever walks through the door because where else will they go? Kind of hospital. She loved it. Not the broken elevators. Not the endless paperwork. Not the smell of antiseptic that clung to her skin no matter how long she showered. She loved the people. The scared mother who needed someone to hold her hand while her child went into surgery. The old man who just wanted someone to listen to his story for the 50th time. The teenager who pretended not to be terrified of the foreneedle. Amelia had always believed that healing wasn't just about medicine. It was about presence. About kindness. About seeing people when the world had reduced them to a wristband and a chart. And for Amelia, that belief came from a simple, painful truth. She knew what it felt like to be invisible. When she was 12, her father walked out. No goodbye. No explanation. Just an empty closet and a mother who stared at the door like it might swallow her, too. Her mother worked 2 jobs after that. A bakery shift at dawn. Cleaning offices at night. Some days, she'd fall asleep with her head still in her hands at the kitchen table. Amelia grew up faster than most kids. She cooked. She helped her little brother, Mateo, with homework. She sat with her mother on the nights when the bills piled up like mountains and hope felt small. There was one thing her mother said over and over. Mi princesa, don't ever let a man buy your soul. Keep your heart clean. Keep your body sacred. Love is not a trade. It's a covenant. So Amelia made a promise, quietly, to herself and to God. She would stay a virgin until she married someone she truly loved. Not someone who waved money. Not someone who used her loneliness to get what they wanted. Someone who would choose her, heart and soul. The older she got, the more ridiculous people told her that promise was. Seriously. In this world, her colleague Kendra once laughed in the break room, stirring sugar into her coffee. Amelia, men will not wait for you to grow up in a Disney movie. Amelia just smiled, a little shy, a little stubborn. I'd rather be alone than with someone who sees me as a toy, she answered. But even as she said it, there were nights she cried into her pillow, wondering if maybe she was asking for too much. Still, she held the line. She studied hard, graduated nursing school top of her class, and landed the job at St. Augustine. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. And it helped her pay rent and send a little money to her mother and Mateo, who still lived in the old apartment across town. Her dream? To save enough to specialize in neonatal care and eventually open a small clinic in her old neighborhood. A place where mothers wouldn't be turned away. Where money wouldn't be the first question. Where hope walked in like it belonged there. Everything was just routine. Long shifts. Tired feet. Smiles for patients. Exhaustion at home. Repeat. Until the day they wheeled him in. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the paramedics rolled an old man into the ward on a stretcher. He was thin. Too thin. His hair was white, sparse, but his eyebrows were still thick and sharp over pale blue eyes that seemed to miss nothing. He looked annoyed. Not scared. Not confused. Annoyed, like somebody had interrupted a very important meeting. Amelia glanced at the chart. Lancaster, Harold, 90 years old. Shortness of breath. Possible pneumonia. Do not resuscitate order on file. Hello, Mr. Lancaster, she said softly, stepping beside the stretcher. I'm Nurse Amelia. We're going to take good care of you, okay? He turned his head, just slightly, and gave her a look that could cut steel. You're too young to promise me something like that, he rasped. Everyone says that, hey. We'll take good care of you. Then they vanish when the shift changes. Amelia didn't flinch. She'd seen fear wear a lot of faces. Anger, sarcasm, silence. I won't vanish, she told him. At least not until my shift is over. For a second, something like surprise flickered in his eyes. Then he grunted. We'll see. They settled him into room 407, a corner room with a view of the hospital's tiny patch of trees. He didn't have many belongings. A small leather bag, a worn-out book, a simple wristwatch that looked older than Amelia. There was no crowd of worried family, no flowers, just a quiet old man and the beeping of machines. At first, he was difficult. He complained about the food, about the room temperature, about the angle of the bed. Kendra rolled her eyes after one particularly grumpy outburst. Guy thinks he's royalty, she muttered, tossing a used glove into the bin. You always get the weird ones, EMI. But Amelia didn't mind. There was something under the sarcasm, something sharp, something lonely. She noticed the way his fingers trembled when he tried to drink water, the way he glanced out the window, like he was searching for someone who never arrived. So she did what she always did with lonely patients. She stayed. She adjusted his pillow. She took extra time to explain each medication. She warmed his hands with her own when he shivered. And when her charting was done, she pulled up a chair and just talked. Not like he was 90, like he was someone. Days turned into a week. His breathing improved. The antibiotics did their job. But he stayed in 407 for observation because, as the doctors kept whispering, there was more going on with his heart. In that week, Amelia learned small pieces of Harold Lancaster's life. He'd been married once, long ago. Widowed. No, he didn't want to talk about it. He had children. Yes, they lived around. No, they didn't visit much. He used to work in business. What kind of business? The kind where people smile at you while they stab you in the back, he'd say dryly. He was sharp. Almost too sharp for someone his age. He noticed everything. When a junior doctor lied about having checked his chart. When another nurse pocketed gloves instead of restocking them. When Amelia went slightly at the number on her bus card app. You took 2 extra shifts this week, he commented one night, as she checked his pulse. Your eyes are exhausted. Are they paying you enough to kill yourself? She blinked. You count my shifts now, she teased. I count everything, he replied. It's a case. He watched her silently for a moment. Why do you do it? He asked suddenly. This job. These hours. You could marry some fool and let him pay your rent. Isn't that what girls your age do now? The question hit a nerve. Amelia forced a smile. Some girls, maybe, she said lightly. But that's not my path. Why not? He pressed. She hesitated. No one had asked her that in a while. Because I don't want to belong to someone who sees me as property, she said at last. I want to stand on my own feet. If I marry, it'll be because I love the person, not because I need his wallet. His eyebrows shot up. You sound like my wife, he murmured, almost to himself. Your wife? Amelia asked gently. He stared at the ceiling. She believed in things, he said. Integrity, duty, the kind of words that go out of fashion every decade. He looked at her again. Tell me something, Nurse Amelia. Are you engaged? Dating? She laughed softly. No, Mr. Lancaster. I'm not. Why not? You're presentable enough. She shook her head, amused. Wow, that's the closest thing to a compliment I've gotten from you, she said. No, I'm not dating because I made a promise a long time ago. I want to keep myself pure until marriage. I want something real, and I haven't found it yet. He stared at her for a long time, his blue eyes suddenly serious. A virgin, he said quietly. At 26. In this city. Yes, she replied, blushing but refusing to look away. I know it sounds crazy. No, he whispered. It sounds rare. He didn't mock her. He didn't laugh. He just watched her like she was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. That was the night something changed between them. He still complained. He still barked it in turns. But his eyes softened when Amelia entered the room. He began to ask about her mother, her brother, her dreams. And every time she talked about wanting to open a clinic, wanting to make sure no little girl grew up feeling invisible, his expression became more thoughtful, like he was filing away every word, like he was planning something. The first sign that something was off came on a Thursday morning. Amelia walked into 407 with his usual meds and found him dressed, not in a hospital gown, in a crisp white shirt and tailored gray slacks that looked expensive. There was a black blazer folded over the chair and polished shoes lined neatly by the bed. He sat on the edge of the bed, oxygen tube still in his nose, reading a document on thick, official-looking paper. Amelia stopped. Mr. Lancaster, she said slowly. Did you order a fashion upgrade? He looked up, almost guilty, then smirked. Doctor said I should try sitting up more, he replied. I refuse to be seen in that flimsy excuse for clothing you people call a gown. She chuckled. Okay, fair. But where did you get the clothes? I had them brought in, he said simply. By who? She wondered. As if on cue, there was a knock on the door. A man in a dark suit stepped in. Neat hair, discreet tie, the sort of man who looked like he'd been born carrying briefcases. Good morning, Mr. Lancaster, he said. Apologies for the delay. Traffic downtown is. He stopped when he saw Amelia. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize. This is Nurse Amelia, Harold said. She's the only one here with a brain. You can speak freely. The man hesitated, glanced at her name badge, then nodded. Very well, sir, he said. I've brought the updated documents. We can review them when you're ready. He placed a leather folder on the table. Amelia tried to act like she wasn't curious, but she could feel the tension humming in the room. Legal documents. A man in a suit. A patient who suddenly refused to look like a patient. Who are you, really? She wondered. Later that day, when she came to adjust his fall, she overheard voices in the hallway. A woman. Sharp, irritated. A man. Younger. Angry. Dad is not in his right mind, the woman hissed. He's been in and out of consciousness. This is exactly the time we shouldn't be changing anything. You're only saying that because you're scared he'll cut you out, the man replied. We need to see that old will. We have a right. He built everything. It's his decision, the woman shot back. Amelia froze. Harold's family. She peeked through the partially open door and saw them. A woman in her 60s, well-dressed, pearls at her throat. A younger man, maybe mid-30s, handsome in a polished, cold way. They looked nothing like the lonely picture she'd had in her mind. Rich, she realized. Disgustingly rich. The younger man noticed her and gave a tight smile. Excuse me, he said, pushing the door open. We're here to see Harold Lancaster. Amelia stepped aside. Of course. I'm his nurse. He's awake, but he tires easily. We won't be long, the woman cut in, already sweeping into the room. Amelia followed, heart pounding for reasons she couldn't explain. The atmosphere in 407 shifted instantly. Harold's jaw tightened. His eyes sharpened. So you remembered I exist, he said dryly. Dad, the woman sighed. Don't start. We were just busy, he finished. I know. You're always busy. Until you hear the word will. Then suddenly you have time. The young man stepped forward. Grandpa, that's not fair, he said. We care about you. We're worried. About my health? Harold asked, arching an eyebrow. Or your inheritance? Silence. Amelia stood awkwardly at the bedside, adjusting his pillow, pretending she wasn't witnessing a war that had been waiting to happen. The younger man noticed her again, eyes flicking over her scrubs, her badge, her tired but composed face. And you are, he asked. Nurse Amelia Ortiz, she said. I've been assigned to Mr. Lancaster since he was admitted. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Ah, the famous Nurse Amelia, he said. Grandpa's mentioned you. Her heart skipped. Has he? She asked cautiously. Oh, yes. He says you're the only one here who listens, the man said. Then, after a beat, that must be quite powerful. The way he said powerful made her skin crawl. I'm just doing my job, she replied evenly. Come now, Nurse Ortiz, the women chimed in. You spend more time with him than we do. He's old, confused, frail. I hope you understand how vulnerable he is in this state. Harold scoffed. I'm sitting right here, he snapped. Vulnerable, my foot. The woman ignored him, eyes still on Amelia. If he says things that sound unreasonable, she continued, like wanting to change his will or give away large sums of money, I hope you'll call us. We want to protect him from exploitation. There it was. The unspoken accusation. You're a young woman. He's a rich old man. Do the math. Amelia's cheeks burned. Mrs. she started. Harriet Lancaster. His daughter, the woman said. Mrs. Lancaster, Amelia said, keeping her voice steady. My job is to advocate for your father's health and wishes. I don't interfere in his legal affairs. If you have concerns, you should speak to his lawyer, not his nurse. The younger man smirked like she'd passed some sort of test. Harold watched her with a strange, almost proud expression. You hear that, Harriet, he said. The nurse understands boundaries better than my own blood. They stayed for 20 minutes. The conversation was stiff, awkward, full of sentences that started with when you're gone, and you know we just want what's best. When they left, the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Amelia adjusted his blanket. Are you okay, Mr. Lancaster? She asked softly. He stayed at the door. Tell me something, Nurse Amelia, he said quietly. If you had the chance to secure your family's future, your mother, your brother, that clinic you dream about, but it meant tying your life to someone like me, what would you do? The question slammed into her chest. I don't understand, she stammered. Tie my life, how? He looked at her, eyes ancient and piercing. Would you marry a 90-year-old man? He asked, if it meant no one you love ever had to worry about money again. Silence. Just the beeping of the heart monitor, the soft hiss of oxygen. Amelia felt like the floor had dropped away. That's not funny, she whispered. I'm not laughing, he replied. He wasn't. He was dead serious. And that's when the trouble really began. That night, Amelia lay awake in her little apartment, staring at the ceiling, his words echoing in her head. Would you marry a 90-year-old man if it meant no one you love ever had to worry about money again? It felt like a trick, a test, a cruel joke. Images flashed through her mind. Her mother, fingers cracked from years of scrubbing floors. Mateo, hunched over a borrowed laptop, trying to study for exams with the Wi-Fi cutting in and out. The clinic she dreamed of, with clean beds and warm lighting, where nobody had to worry if they could pay. And then a wedding. Her, in a dress, standing next to a man who could barely stand. Vows that sounded more like a contract than a promise. Her stomach turned. She remembered her mother's voice. Don't ever let a man buy your soul. Was this that? Or was this something else? She hated herself for even considering it. But she couldn't stop. Over the next few days, she tried to pretend nothing had changed. She took his vitals, gave his meds, chatted about the weather. He didn't bring it up again, at least not directly, but his eyes followed her more carefully. One afternoon, when she was refilling his water, he spoke without looking at her. My wife, he said quietly, married me when I was broke. She paused. You were broke? She asked. As a church mouse, he said. I had nothing but a half-formed idea for company and a stubborn streak. Her father told her she was insane. Said I'd ruin her life. She just smiled and said, I'd rather be poor with a man I respect than rich with a man I don't. He finally turned his gaze to her. She stuck with me for 4 to 7 years, he continued. She saw every contract, every negotiation. She kept my feet on the ground when the money started coming in. Without her, the fortune people whisper about would have eaten me alive. Amelia felt her throat tighten. Sounds like she was incredible, she murmured. She was, he said. She died 30 years ago. I've been drifting ever since. He paused, then added, People think money fills the hole left by loss. It doesn't. It just makes the room bigger. She swallowed. I'm sorry, she said. Don't be, he replied. Just understand that when I talk about marriage, I don't treat it lightly. Not even now. The word marriage hung between them like a storm cloud. Meanwhile, the strange things in the background kept adding up. More suited men visited. Always with folders. Always with serious faces. Harriet and the younger man, Dylan, she heard Harold call him once, began showing up more often, lurking in the hallway, whispering to nurses, asking innocent questions about who had access to Harold's chart. One evening, Amelia walked into the staff lounge and the conversation stopped. Kendra and two other nurses stared at her like she'd walked into the wrong party. What? Amelia asked, forcing a laugh. Do I have something on my face? Kendra bit her lip, clearly dying to speak. You didn't tell us your patient is loaded, she said finally. Amelia's blood ran cold. What are you talking about? She asked slowly. Kendra snorted. Come on. You really don't know, she said. Harold Lancaster. As in Lancaster Holdings. As in the guy who used to own half the buildings downtown. The room spun. Amelia had never paid much attention to business news. She barely had time to sleep, let alone watch the financial channel. No, she whispered. I thought he just said he worked in businesses. Another nurse pulled out her phone, tapped a few times, then turned the screen toward Amelia. A much younger Harold stared back at her from a news article photo. Dark hair, strong jaw, confident smile. Retired billionaire philanthropist Harold Lancaster announced today. The headline read, Billionaire. Not just rich. Billionaire. Amelia's heart hammered. Suddenly, his tailored clothes, the lawyers, the tense family arguments, it all made sense. And then, like a slow, sinking wave, the other realization followed. He had asked, would you marry a 90-year-old man if it meant no one you love ever had to worry about money again? It wasn't a hypothetical. It was a question only a billionaire could afford to ask. The gossip spread through the hospital like wildfire. By the next day, people were whispering in hallways. The virgin nurse and the billionaire. Someone joked under their breath as she passed. Have you heard? The old man's obsessed with her, another murmured. Kendra cornered her in the supply closet. Okay, spill, she demanded. Did he seriously ask you to marry him? Amelia's chest tightened. Who told you that? She asked. No one had to, Kendra replied. Yesterday, Dylan, you know, the grandson, was arguing with the doctor about some ridiculous idea his grandfather has about marrying that little nurse. And there's only one nurse he ever talks about. She crossed her arms. Look, girl, I'm not judging. If a billionaire asked me to marry him, I'd be trying on dresses before he finished the sentence. This is your chance. You could be set for life. Amelia shook her head, panic rising. It's not that simple, she whispered. He's 90. He's my patient. It's wrong. It feels wrong. Does it? Kendra challenged. Or does it feel scary because it's big? Because it's different? Old men marry young women all the time. At least his kind. He seems kind, right? Amelia thought of his gruff voice, his sharp eyes, the rare, soft smile when she made him laugh. He is, she admitted. But I made a promise. I wanted to fall in love with someone my age. Someone I could build a life with. Not babysit until they die. Babysit a billionaire, Kendra said. You hear yourself. EMI. You talk all the time about wanting to help your mom, your brother, about your dream clinic. This is literally that dream on a silver platter. Sometimes blessings show up in weird packages, you know. Amelia closed her eyes. She wanted to scream. Because Kendra wasn't entirely wrong, and that made it worse. The pressure only increased when Dylan pulled her aside one afternoon near the elevators. Nurse Ortiz, he said smoothly, stepping into her path. Do you have a minute? She wanted to say no. Every instinct in her body screamed no. But he was the patient's family. She forced a polite smile. Of course, Mr. Lancaster, she said. Dylan, please, he replied, smiling the kind of smile that had probably worked on a lot of people. He leaned casually against the wall, as if this were a casual chat and not an ambush. I'll get straight to the point, he said. My grandfather's stubborn. He gets fixated on ideas. Recently, he seems very fond of you. Emilia clenched her jaw. He's my patient, she said. I care about all my patients. I'm sure you do, Dylan said smoothly. But not all of them invite their nurse to sit and talk about their deepest regrets, do they? Her heart skipped a beat. How much had Harold told them? I don't know what you're implying, she replied. I'm not implying anything, he said quickly. I'm offering you some advice, and maybe an opportunity. He glanced around, then lowered his voice. If my grandfather starts saying absurd things, he murmured, like wanting to change his will or, God forbid, marry a girl young enough to be his granddaughter, I need you to gently steer him away from that. Emilia's eyes widened. Steer him away, she repeated. That's not my place. It is if you want to keep your job, Dylan said, still smiling, but his eyes had gone cold. The threat was subtle, but it was there. Our family has influence, he continued. Don't misunderstand. We appreciate what you've done for him. Really. But if the hospital administration starts to think you're encouraging his delusions, it won't look good for you. Anger flared in Emilia's chest. Are you accusing me of manipulating your grandfather? She demanded. He held up his hands. I'm not accusing anyone of anything, he said. I'm just saying, if you help us keep him from making rash decisions, we'll be grateful. He reached into his pocket, pulled out an envelope, and pressed it into her hand. The thick weight of it told her everything she needed to know. Money. Hush money. Bribe money. What is this? She asked, voice shaking with fury. A thank you, he said, for looking out for the family. She stared at the envelope. Then, slowly, deliberately, she pushed it back into his hand. I look out for my patients, she said, not their inheritance. If you want to control your grandfather, talk to him. Don't use me as your puppet. His jaw clenched. You're making a mistake, he said coldly. No, she replied, turning away. I'm keeping my soul. She walked away before he could see the tears burning in her eyes. That night, she broke. She sat on the floor of her tiny kitchen, back against the cabinet, and sobbed. From exhaustion, from confusion, from the weight of being pulled in 10 different directions. Her mother's rent was due. Matteo had been accepted into a good university but couldn't pay the deposit. Her own bank account was a thin line away from overdraft. And somewhere, in a private ward, a dying billionaire had decided she was worth testing. She pulled out her old journal, the one she hadn't written in much since nursing school, and opened to a blank page. Her handwriting shook as she wrote. God, I don't understand what you're doing. I wanted a simple life. Work. Save. Maybe one day meet someone kind who would love me for who I am. I never asked to be tempted like this. I don't want to sell myself. I don't want to be bought. But I also don't want to ignore an opportunity to help my family. If this is a trap, protect me. If this is a blessing, give me wisdom. Please, don't let me lose myself. She shut the journal and pressed it to her chest. Sometimes, you don't get clear answers. Sometimes, all you get is the strength to face the next day. The next morning, Harold was waiting for her. Not just awake. Waiting. You look like you fought a war, he observed as she walked in. Maybe I did, she said tiredly, hanging his stethoscope around her neck. He watched her carefully as she checked his vitals. My grandson spoke to you, he said. Not a question. A statement. She froze. He tried to bribe me, she replied without thinking, then immediately regretted it. But Harold just nodded, unsurprised. Of course he did, he muttered. He's his father's son. He sighed. What did you do? He asked. I gave it back, she said. I told him I'm not his puppet. Slowly, a smile spread across his lined face. Good, he said softly. Very good. He reached into the drawer of his bedside table and pulled out a small, worn leather notebook. Sit, he said. She did. He placed the notebook in her hands. What's this? She asked. My life, he said. Or at least, the parts that matter. She opened it. It wasn't a diary. It was a list. Of names. dates, decisions, donations, deals. Next to many of them, in small, neat handwriting, was another name. Eleanor, his late wife. We made every major choice together, he said. Even after she died, I asked myself, what would Eleanor do? But I'm tired now, Amelia. Too tired to ask questions into the air. I need someone real. Someone with a spine. Someone who believes in more than numbers. He looked at her with a gaze that felt heavy with decades. So I'll ask you again, he said quietly. But this time, not as a hypothetical. Will you marry me? Her world stopped. This was it. The moment the entire story had been leading toward. Her breath caught. Mr. Lancaster, she stammered. This is insane. You're 90. I'm your nurse. People will think. People always think, he interrupted. They thought my wife married me for what I might have, not who I was. They were wrong. I learned to stop living by the rumors. He reached for her hand. His skin was cool, fragile, but his grip was steady. I won't touch you, he said bluntly. I'm old, not delusional. This wouldn't be a marriage of romance. It would be a contract of trust, a companionship at the end of my road. Her heart pounded. Why me? She whispered. You've known me for weeks. Your family, they've been here your whole life. His eyes hardened. My family loves my money, he said. They love my properties. My name. The doors it opens. They do not love me. You, on the other hand, told my grandson to keep his bribe and told my daughter to talk to my lawyer if she doesn't like my choices. You clean bedpans and hold old men's hands and still dream about helping people who can never pay you back. You're not perfect, but you're honest. And I am running out of time to fix what I broke. He took a breath. I built an empire, Amelia, he said. Then I watched as it began to rot from the inside. I tried to correct it with donations, with charities. But the people in charge of those charities, they became corrupt, too. What I need, at the end of my life, is someone incorruptible to guard what's left. Someone who'd rather stay poor than sell out. Someone like you. Tay stung her eyes. You don't need a wife for that, she whispered. You need an executor, a trustee, a lawyer. Lawyers are loyal to money, he said. Spouses, when they choose wisely, are loyal to something deeper. He squeezed her hand. Marry me, he said again. You'll inherit control of the foundation I've built. You'll be able to fund clinics, scholarships, hospitals. You'll be able to do more good in 1 year than you could in a lifetime on a nurse's salary. Your mother will never scrub another floor unless she wants to. Your brother will finish school without debt. And my life's work will be in the hands of someone who still believes in sacred things. Her mind screamed. Her heart ached. And what about my promise? She whispered. About love. About intimacy. About the life I imagined. He nodded slowly. You'll lose some of that, he said honestly. You may never have the marriage you dreamed of. Raising children with someone your age. Waking up next to a man who can carry you instead of you carrying him. I won't sugarcoat it. If you say yes, you may be choosing sacrifice. You may be closing doors. But doors will also open. Different ones. For you. For thousands of people you'll never meet. He paused. I won't force you, he added. If you say no, I'll still make sure you're comfortable. A scholarship. A small trust. Enough to ease your burden. I'm not here to buy your yes. I need someone I can trust. And right now, that's you. Silence. Amelia stared at him, hands trembling. This wasn't just a proposal. It was a crossroads. One path, her personal dreams. Maybe love. Maybe a simple life. Less money. More uncertainty. The other, sacrifice. Security. Influence. The chance to change lives far beyond her own. Which would you choose? Really think about that for a second. Because it's easy, sitting on the other side of a screen, to say, I'd never do that. It's different when the weight of your mother's exhaustion and your brother's future sit on your chest like a stone. Amelia didn't answer him that day. She asked for time. He gave it. 3 days. In those 3 days, the world seemed to sharpen. The hospital corridors looked narrower, the beeping monitors louder. Every glance from a co-worker felt loaded, like they were waiting to see which way she'd jump. Dylan avoided her. Harriet stared at her like a snake. Kendra oscillated between pushing her to secure the bag and warning her that she'd be miserable and lonely. Emilia visited her mother. She didn't tell her everything. Just enough. "Mama," she said, sitting at the small kitchen table. "If someone offered to help us, really help us, but it meant I'd have to sacrifice the life I dreamed of." Her mother's eyes, lined from years of worry, searched her face. "Who?" she asked softly. "And what kind of sacrifice?" Emilia swallowed. "An old man," she said. "A good man, but very old. He wants a commitment from me in exchange for making sure we'd never struggle again." Her mother's face went pale. "Is he pressuring you?" she demanded. "Is someone exploiting you? Because I will march to that hospital and—" "No," Emilia interrupted quickly. "He's not forcing me. He's asking." Her mother was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke. "Mihija," she said gently, "when your father left, I told you never to let a man buy your soul. I still believe that. No amount of money is worth losing who you are." She reached across the table and took Emilia's hand. "But I also know you," she continued. "You have always been willing to sacrifice for others. Even as a child, you gave your lunch to kids who had less. You spent your weekends tutoring Matteo. Your heart is big. If you choose to sacrifice something for the sake of many, that's not selling yourself. That's offering yourself." Tears blurred Emilia's vision. "I don't want to resent him," she whispered. "To look at him and see a prison instead of a person." "Then ask yourself this," her mother said. "Do you respect him? Do you believe in what he wants you to do? Can you see yourself sitting by his side, holding his hand when the time comes, without bitterness in your heart?" Emilia closed her eyes. She saw Harold. Grumpy, sharp, honest, broken in ways he rarely showed. She saw the notebook, the list of donations, the foundation he'd started, the difference it could make. She saw his tired, hopeful eyes when he asked her to marry him. "Yes," she whispered. "I think I could." Her mother squeezed her hand. "Then whatever you choose," she said, "I'll stand by you. But remember this, your body, your promises, your future, they are precious. Do not give them away lightly. Not to a young man, not to an old one, not to anyone." The second person she confided in was Matteo. He was 19. Smart, idealistic, still too young to understand how heavy the world could get. When she explained, haltingly, what was happening, his reaction was immediate. "No," he said strongly. "Absolutely not. You're not marrying some old man for me. I won't let you." "It wouldn't just be for you," she said softly. "It would be for the clinic. For so many people." "I don't care," he snapped. "I'd rather drop out of school than know my sister sacrificed her whole life because of me. I'll work. I'll figure it out. You deserve love, Emilia. Real love. You deserve to dance at your wedding because you're happy. Not because you're trying to convince yourself you made the right choice." He took a breath, eyes glossy. "Please don't do this for me," he whispered. "If you do it because you can live with it." That question haunted her. Could she live with it? On the third day, Emilia walked into 407 with her heart pounding so hard she felt dizzy. Harold was awake, dressed, the leather notebook on his lap. "Well," he asked quietly. She sat down. Her hands trembled, but her voice, when it came, surprised her with its steadiness. "I'll do it," she said, "on one condition." Hope flickered in his eyes. "Name it," he said. "This marriage must be honest from the beginning," she said. "We tell your family the truth, that it's about trust, about stewardship, not romance. We sign a contract saying that most of your fortune goes into the foundation, not into my personal account. I'll accept a stipend, a trust for my family, yes, but I won't be your family's enemy. I won't be the woman they picture rolling in money while they fight over scraps." She took a breath. "In exchange," she continued, "I will care for you. I will honor you. I will protect your wishes, even when your children hate me. I will guard your foundation and try to keep it clean. And when you die, I will carry your legacy, not as your gold-digging widow, but as your partner in purpose. He stared at her, moved in a way she'd never seen before. Slowly, tears filled his pale blue eyes. Eleanor would have liked you, he whispered. She smiled sadly. I hope so, she said. He nodded. Then it's settled, he said. We'll tell them today. And just like that, the course of her life shifted. What she didn't know, was how ugly the fight would get. You'd think a billionaire announcing his intention to marry his nurse would be dramatic enough. But his family, they turned it into war. The confrontation happened in a hospital conference room. It was supposed to be a family meeting with the ethics committee, the hospital administrator, and Harold's lawyer, Mr. Chen, the quiet man in the suit Amelia had already met. The air was thick with tension. Harriet sat stiffly, pearls gleaming like armor. Dylan lounged in his chair, pretending not to care. The hospital administrator, Ms. Briggs, wore a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. She was already calculating the hospital's liability, the potential press, the donations at risk. Amelia sat beside Harold, hands folded in her lap, heart trying to escape her chest. Mr. Chen stood at the head of the table, calm. Thank you all for coming, he said. Mr. Lancaster has made a decision regarding his personal affairs and wishes to inform you in the proper setting, with witnesses. Harriet scoffed. Is this about the will again? She demanded. We've been over this. It's about my marriage, Harold cut in. Silence. Harriet blinked. You're what? She said. I've asked Nurse Amelia Ortiz to marry me, he said clearly, and she has accepted. The room exploded. Absolutely not. Harriet shouted, slamming her hand on the table. You've lost your mind, Dylan spat. This is highly irregular, Miss Briggs said quickly, glancing at Amelia with barely concealed judgment. The words flew like knives. Manipulation, exploitation, inappropriate, unethical. They accused Amelia of seducing him, of taking advantage of his confused state, of trapping a vulnerable old man for his money. She sat there, fists clenched in her lap, tears stinging but refusing to fall. Harold, frail but furious, slammed his own hand on the table. Enough, he roared, coughing. You talk about me like I died already. I am not senile. I am not confused. I built 3 companies from the ground up. I can still read a balance sheet better than any of you. He pointed a shaking finger at Harriet. You married a man because he had a bigger house than the boy you actually loved, he said. You told your mother you'd never be poor like him. Don't lecture me about exploitation. Harriet went pale. He turned to Dylan. You have never held a job for more than 6 months, he said. You live off my accounts and call it entrepreneurship. You tried to bribe my nurse to undermine my wishes. Do you want to talk about manipulation? Let's. Dylan's face flushed bright red. You're being used, he snapped. Can't you see that? Harold laughed, a bitter, wheezing sound. If there's one thing in this room not using me, it's the woman sitting beside me, he said. She turns down bribes. She returns envelopes full of cash. She tells me no when I push too hard. She's the only person here not salivating over my will. He looked at Miss Briggs. As for you, he said, this hospital has received sizable anonymous donations for years. Do you really think they'll keep coming if I die thinking you helped my family cage me rather than respect me? Her cheeks colored. Mr. Chen stepped in, voice steady. Medically and legally, he said, Mr. Lancaster has been evaluated by independent psychiatrists. Twice. He is of sound mind. He understands the nature and consequences of marriage, property distribution, and legal commitments. The ethics committee has reviewed the situation. There's concern about power dynamics, yes, but there's no evidence of coercion by Ms. Ortiz. He opened a folder and laid out documents. Here's the prenuptial agreement Mr. Lancaster has drafted, he continued. In it, he places 85% of his assets into the Lancaster Foundation for Public Health and Education. 10% will be distributed among his children and grandchildren, as previously outlined. 5%, along with the role of chairperson of the foundation, will go to Ms. Ortiz. He looked at Harriet and Dylan. "She is not taking everything," he said. "In fact, she insisted on capping her personal benefit. Your father originally proposed leaving her a far larger share. She refused." Harriet faltered. "She refused," she repeated, stunned. Mr. Chen nodded. "Yes," he said. "I have it in writing. Recorded, actually, for clarity." He pressed a button on a small device. The room filled with Harold's voice, recorded days earlier. "Fine, then, 50% to you." "No," Amelia's voice answered. "That's too much. I don't want to be rich, Mr. Lancaster. I want to be useful." Silence. Then her voice again. "If we do this, most of it has to go into a foundation. To hospitals, clinics, scholarships. I'll take enough to care for my family, yes. But I won't be the woman who walked into a hospital broke and walked out owning a billionaire's life. I won't live like that." The recording clicked off. The room was very, very still. For the first time, Harriet looked at Amelia not with hatred, but with confusion, as if trying to reconcile the girl in cheap scrubs with the integrity on the recording. Ms. Briggs cleared her throat. "Well," she said slowly, "from an institutional standpoint, if the marriage and foundation are structured legally and ethically, and since he has been evaluated as mentally competent." She hesitated. "We can't deny him the right to make decisions about his own life," she finished. Dylan exploded. "This is ridiculous," he shouted. "You're ruining our family over some saint in sneakers." He turned on Amelia. "What did you do to him?" he snarled. "What did you promise? That you'd hold his hand until he dies if he made you rich? Is that what you're good at? Playing pew while negotiating behind closed doors?" Amelia stood. Her knees shook. Her hands shook. But her voice was clear. "I promised him I'd protect his legacy, not strip it for parts," she said. "I promised him I'd sit with him when the monitors get louder and the world gets smaller. Not because of his money, because he's a human being who doesn't want to die alone." She met Dylan's furious eyes. "You want his fortune?" she asked quietly. "Then you sit with him. You clean his bed. You listen to him talk about the wife he misses. You hold his hand when he can't breathe. You wash the smell of sickness out of your clothes at midnight. You do what I do. Then come talk to me about what I deserve." The room went silent again. This time, the silence felt different. Heavy, respectful, afraid. Harold smiled. "That," he said softly, "is why I'm marrying her." After that meeting, the lines were drawn. The hospital, reluctantly, agreed not to interfere as long as all legal and ethical boxes were checked. The family signed the documents, some with shaking hands, some with barely concealed rage. The prenup was official. The foundation charter was signed, naming Amelia as future chair. The wedding date was set. A small ceremony. No church. No aisles full of flowers. Just a hospital chapel, a handful of witnesses, and two lives that couldn't be more different, intersecting at the strangest crossroads. Word spread like wildfire anyway. The virgin nurse is marrying the 90-year-old billionaire. People whispered on social media. Some called her a hero. Some called her a hypocrite. Some called her a gold digger anyway, because there will always be people who prefer a simple lie to a complicated truth. Through it all, Amelia moved like someone walking through a storm, eyes on a distant point, heart battered but determined. Was she sure? No, but she was resolved. Sometimes that's all you get. The morning of the wedding, she stood in front of a cracked mirror in the hospital bathroom, wearing a simple white dress she'd bought on sale 2 years earlier for a cousin's party but never wore. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean, pure, like the promise she'd made years ago. She looked at her reflection, at the woman who had dreamed of falling in love with a man whose back wasn't already bent under the weight of years, at the woman who now chose a different kind of love. "This is my choice," she whispered to herself. "Not theirs. Not the world's. Mine." She slipped on a silver pendant her mother had given her, took a breath, walked out. The chapel was small. Sunlight streamed through stained glass windows, painting colors on the floor. Harold sat in a wheelchair at the front, wearing a tailored suit, oxygen tube tucked discreetly. He looked tired, but proud. Mr. Chen stood nearby, along with a hospital chaplain. Her mother and Matteo sat in the front row, eyes shining with tears. Harriet and Dylan sat further back, stiff, watching, judging, maybe still hoping something would happen to stop this. Something almost did. As the chaplain began to speak, as the words "Do you, Amelia, take Harold," echoed through the room, an alarm blared. Not from the chapel. From the hallway. A code blew. Amelia's body reacted before her mind did. She turned toward the sound. Her instinct screamed, "Run. Help. This is what you are. A nice." The chaplain paused. "You're needed," Harold said quietly. She looked at him, torn. "I can't leave you," she whispered. He smiled gently. "If you abandoned who you are to become my wife," he said, "I would have chosen wrong. Go." It was one of those moments people talk about for years afterward. The bride running down the aisle away from the altar, ripping off her shoes as she sprinted toward someone else's crisis. She burst into the hallway and found a teenage boy collapsing, face gray, nurses shouting for help. She dropped to her knees, barking orders, starting compressions, fighting for a life that had nothing to do with foundations or wills or gossip, because that's who she was. The code lasted 10 minutes. They stabilized him. When it was finally over, sweat dripping down her back, she leaned against the wall, chest heaving. One of the nurses laughed breathlessly. "You're in a wedding dress," she said. Amelia looked down. White fabric, wrinkled now, a smear of something on the hem. She smiled. "Yeah," she said. "I guess I am." The nurse shook her head, or in her eyes. "No one can ever say you did this for the money," she murmured. When Amelia walked back into the chapel, barefoot, dress askew, hair falling out of its bun, Harold laughed. A real laugh. Full, warm, younger than his buddy. Eleanor would have done the same thing. He chuckled. She walked back up the aisle, cheeks flushed, heart pounding from adrenaline and something like joy. The chaplain cleared his throat. "Now," he said, smiling, "where were we?" This time, when he asked, "Do you, Amelia, take Harold?" she whispered, "I do." And when he asked Harold, "Do you take Amelia?" Harold looked at her with eyes full of gratitude, not possession, and said, "With my whole remaining heart, I do." They exchanged simple bands. No kiss. Instead, Amelia gently squeezed his hand, and he lifted it to his lips, kissing her knuckles with trembling reverence. The chapel erupted in quiet applause. Some for love, some for courage, some just because they knew, deep down, they'd witnessed something rare, a choice that didn't fit into neat boxes. He didn't live long after that. 3 months. 3 months of being his wife. 3 months of long conversations about the past, about mistakes, about the way money twists people if they let it. 3 months of helping him sign final documents, finalize foundation strategies, write letters to his children he should have written years before. 3 months of watching his body fail while his mind stayed sharp enough to grieve it. When the end came, it came at night. Amelia was there. Not because she was on shift, because she wanted to be. She sat beside him, hand in his, listening to his breaths grow shallower. "Did I ruin your life?" he whispered suddenly, eyes half open. She smiled through tears. "No," she said. "You changed it. But you didn't ruin it." "Do you regret saying yes?" he asked. She thought about love stories she might never live, children she might never have, the weight of a foundation she would now be responsible for. And then she thought about the lives that would be saved, the clinics that would be built, the scholarships that would be given to kids like Mateo. She thought about the peace she'd seen in his eyes every time they discussed the future of his fortune. "Sometimes I'm scared," she admitted, "but I don't regret it." He smiled faintly. "Good," he whispered. "Then, I can go." He squeezed her hand one last time. "Tell Eleanor I did one thing right at the end," he murmured. The monitor beeped slower, then stopped. Amelia laid her head on the bed and cried like a widow who had lost not just a husband, but a complicated, unexpected friend. Because that's what he had become. The aftermath was loud. There was a funeral. Private. And yet, somehow, the press still got wind of the young widow. Reporters called. Headlines bloomed. Nace turned billionaire widow takes over foundation. Some said she was a saint. Some still said she was a thief. The family, They were forced to accept what had been signed and witnessed. Harriet received her share, smaller than she'd hoped, but still significant. Dylan tried to contest the will. He failed. In court, the recordings of his attempted bribe didn't help his case. He lost more than money. He lost face. Opportunities dried up. Investors who had once flocked to him suddenly backed away. He wasn't destroyed, but he was humbled. The Lancaster Foundation, meanwhile, officially announced its new chair, Amelia Ortiz Lancaster. She kept her last name, Ortiz, in front, to remember where she came from. The first thing she did, she set up a scholarship fund for nursing students from low-income backgrounds. The second, she drew up plans for a small clinic in her old neighborhood, St. Eleanor Community Health Center, named not after herself, but after the woman who'd shaped the man whose money she now stewarded. A year later, if you walked into that neighborhood, you'd see something remarkable. A bright, clean building where there used to be an abandoned lot. Mothers sitting in waiting rooms without fear of bills they couldn't pay. Young nurses, fresh out of school, working side by side with older doctors, learning not just medicine but compassion. And in an office upstairs, behind a desk piled with charts and donation requests and plans, you'd find Amelia, still in scrubs, still tired, still very much herself. She didn't live in a mansion. She still rented a place, not above a mechanic anymore, but not in some gated community either. Her mother, she finally rested more, working part-time at the clinic's front desk by choice, not necessity. Mateo, he was in medical school on a full scholarship, one he technically qualified for like anyone else, even if his sister had pulled a few strings. And Amelia, was she happy? That's a harder question. She was fulfilled. She was busy. She was sometimes lonely. There were nights she sat by her window, looking at couples walking past on the street, laughing together, and wondered what it would have been like to have that kind of love. There were days she missed the simplicity of just being a nice, not a chairperson with meetings and legal documents and decisions that affected thousands. But when she walked through the clinic halls and a child ran up and hugged her legs because this is the place that made my brother better, something in her heart whispered, this is why. As for romance, she didn't rush it. She met people, talked, laughed, took her time. Grief and duty sat in her chest together, making space slowly for something new. If one day she allowed herself to love someone again, it would be from a place of strength, not emptiness, because she had learned something powerful. You can give a part of your life away for the sake of others without losing all of yourself, if you hold on tightly to who you really are. And Dylan, he eventually found work in a smaller firm. No big titles, no private jets. He had to actually show up, actually earn his paycheck. Years later, he visited the St. Eleanor Clinic quietly. He stood in the lobby, hands in his pockets, watching kids play with donated toys. When Amelia saw him, her stomach tightened. He walked up, looking older, less polished, more human. You did all this, he said softly, gesturing around. We did, she corrected. Your grandfather, the foundation, the community. He was quiet. I'm sorry, he said at last, for what I said, for who I was. She studied him. People can change. Not always, but sometimes. He wanted you to find your own way, she said. Maybe this is part of it. He nodded, eyes shining. He chose well, he murmured. With you. She smiled sadly. He chose differently, she said, and I chose with him. So what's the moral in all of this? Is it that you should marry for money? No. Is it that suffering automatically makes you noble? No. It's something deeper. Something messier. Something that doesn't fit in neat social media posts. Sometimes, life gives you choices that don't look like good versus bad. They look like good versus good, mixed with fear, sacrifice, and uncertainty. Sometimes, doing the right thing for others costs you something real. Your comfort, your simplicity, your picture-perfect dreams. And sometimes, the people who judge you the loudest from the outside are the ones who have never stood where you're standing. If you've ever been in a position where every choice looked complicated, if you've ever been called names for following your conscience instead of everyone else's expectations, if you've ever sacrificed something precious to protect people you love, you're not alone. You deserve a story that acknowledges how hard that is. You deserve grace. And if you believe that integrity matters more than gossip, if you believe that how we use what we're given, money, time, opportunities, is more important than how impressive it looks from the outside, then this story is for you. Because at the end of the day, a virgin nurse did marry her 90-year-old patient. Not because she was perfect, not because he was, but because, in that strange crossing of lives, they found a way to turn one man's fortune into thousands of people's hope. And if that moved you, even a little, take a moment. Drop a comment about what you would have done in Amelia's place. Share this with someone who's carrying the weight of a hard decision. And if you want more stories that dive deep into the messy, complicated choices people make, hit that like button, subscribe, and stay with us. Because sometimes, the most unbelievable stories are the ones that start in the quiet corner of a hospital room with a question that changes everything.